The Mandalorian Season 3 premieres next week. To prepare, I thought I would look back to the first 2 seasons and take a moment to celebrate everything that made them great. So here's everything I loved about Season 2 of the series. I really like the design of the opening planet. All the graffiti, the lights that keep monsters in the dark away, it immediately feels dangerous. And then Din brings Grogu into a fighting ring to the death. Even the scumbag Gor Koresh is like, "What are you doing bringing a baby in here?" I do like his character design. I talked about all the aliens used in Season 1, and I continue to love how the series leans into the pulpy weirdness of Star Wars. Grogu seeing the whistling birds light up and then diving into his pram is, as usual, both adorable and hilarious. The little fight that breaks out is cool, and I love seeing Din using his armor as a weapon, actively hitting someone's fist with his own helmet. And the way he dispatches Koresh is chilling and dark, pun intended. But I need to rewind just a sec to Gor's mention of Tatooine, and then Mos Pelgo, and then we see the title of Chapter 9, The Marshal, and all these little hints that the rumors leading up to this season were true. People were saying Timothy Olyphant was going to be in Star Wars and that he would be playing someone named Cobb Vanth, and the entire time I laughed it off because I thought it was too good to be true. A character from 3 interludes in the Aftermath books? No way. But then I heard the name Mos Pelgo, and I saw the title, and I just sat upright, and I stayed that way for 5 or so minutes. But until that time comes, I like that Din now lets the pit droids near the Razor Crest after his interactions with IG-11. And Pelimato is all of us getting to see Grogu again after a year. Thank the Force! How much do you want for it? Just kidding, but not really. I know R5-D4 was briefly in Season 1, but I love that he got the spotlight in this episode, especially after reading his story and from a certain point of view. All he wanted was to be useful, but he gave that up for R2-D2's mission. He escaped the Stormtrooper massacre of the Jawas and headed off on his own. I'm so relieved to know he is still around, but Peli should treat him better. Another great shot of Grogu having the time of his life on a speeder bike, and the music continues to slap, sounding even more Western and probably the most Western episode of the series. W. Earl Brown as the Weequay bartender, Tonti, is perfect casting, a fellow veteran of Deadwood, just like Timothy Olyphant. And speaking of, just look at him. Look at that perfect man. When I tell you, I could not believe my eyes. Honestly, of everything that happened in Season 2 of this series, this is the moment that makes me wish we had started recording our reactions earlier, because I lost my dang mind at Cobb Vanth. As an avid Star Wars book and comic reader, this moment means the world to me. I figured we would see Boba Fett in this series, and that we would just kind of ignore the time his armor passed to a local lawman in the books. We would figure out how Boba got his armor back off-screen. I had accepted that. I'm just so used to the books and comics being secondary material that even with all the rumors, I just thought there was no way. But we got an entire episode dedicated to this one very small character even in the books, and now he's a fan favorite, a well-known name. I seriously can't fully describe how much I love that Filoni and Favreau were willing to work Cobb Vanth into this story. I love that it's clearly Boba Fett's acid-scarred armor, even if it doesn't fit well, and I love that Cobb taking his helmet off stops Din in his tracks, and Timothy Olyphant is just perfect in this role. I love that he just has a Western cowboy-style accent. It's a little goofy, but it's so earnest and treated as real by the other characters, which is very Star Wars-y, and we'll be talking about that again in this very video. When he actually introduces himself, I think I finally accepted that this was all real and settled down during my first viewing. And here I am watching it again for the I don't know how many number of times, and I'm writing about it, and I still love it just as much. Of course, then I was terrified they were just going to immediately kill him in a shootout, which is apparently a danger I'm going to have to live with forever after they put him up against Cad Bane in the Book of Boba Fett. The introduction of the Krayt Dragon is also awesome, and something I just never expected we would get to see on screen in this way. This story, mixing Western cowboys facing off with a fantasy-style dragon creature, is so fun. Even Cobb Vanth's little speeder thing is cool, just a seat on a pod racing engine that may or may not be Anakin's. It feels so perfectly cobbled together, pun intended. I love it. I like that Cobb Vanth's flashbacks match his story from the Aftermath books. It's not exact, but it's close enough, an abridged version. I guess every once in a while both suns shine on a womp rat's tail is an amazing line. And then his shootout with the slavers is sick, returning like he's a superhero, and he absolutely is. The Massiffs acting like big ol' puppy dogs is wonderful. I want to pet one. The expansion of Tusken Raider Society that continues on into the Book of Boba Fett is great, and I really like seeing little details like the use of gaffy sticks as multi-tools instead of just weapons. Seeing the Banthas riding in single file is some nice attention to detail. The reactions of the Tuskens seeing the Krayt Dragon eat one of their own instead of the Bantha is hilarious. The story of the small town learning to work together with their enemies is such a good Star Wars story, setting aside grudges to work for the good of everyone instead of just your own group. I love that the Krayt Dragon's roar matches just about every iteration of Obi-Wan's imitation that we've heard in the various versions of A New Hope. And I love that the aspect ratio of the screen expands as the dragon fully emerges from its cave. I did not expect the acid spit, but I think it's awesome that it has something to make it even more dragon-like, even if it's not fire. The shot of Cobb putting on his helmet and launching off with Din to take on the Krayt at close range is so freaking cool. Din smacking Cobb Vanth's jetpack to get him out of the way like Boba Fett is delightful. The inclusion of the Krayt Dragon Pearl is a great touch. And then, after all of that, we get the tease of Boba Fett at the end. I can't even. Look, there's a lot to love about Season 1 of The Mandalorian, but the Season 2 premiere was a whole new level, using Star Wars ingredients to tell a fantastic and exciting story that had a little something for every kind of Star Wars fan, and Jon Favreau's direction was spectacular. I was harsh on the volume when it came to the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, but The Mandalorian was designed around stagecraft technology, and it shows. I know The Jedi and The Rescue are the episodes that get the most attention in Season 2, but I think The Marshal just might be my favorite of the series so far. In Chapter 10, The Passenger, the comedy beat of the alien thief that gets launched by the jetpack off in the distance is very funny, and Grogu running back over to Din to be picked up is almost too cute to handle. Dr. Mandible is the absolute best name for this ant creature, and the fact that the episode is directed by Ant-Man's Peyton Reed just makes it even better. Frog Lady is a delightfully weird character, and the animatronics look great, and I love the fact that her name is simply Frog Lady. I love Grogu's teeny little hammock hanging right above Din's bed on the ship. I like the boring New Republic traffic stop, but I really like the shot of the X-Wings locking their S-foils in attack position as a clear sign that Din is in trouble. It's great seeing Trapper Wolf again, but I absolutely love Paul Sun-Hyung Lee as Carson Teva. I like the efforts to connect back to Chapter 6, The Prisoner, which felt like one of the more standalone episodes of Season 1, first with the New Republic recognizing the Razor Crest and its role in the breakout, and later Frog Lady repairing Zero so she could communicate through him. I love the use of the white knobby spiders from Ralph McQuarrie's Empire Strikes Back concept art as the big and small scary monsters of this episode. Frog Lady grabbing her clothes with her tongue is awesome, and then her hiking up her skirt to leap out of harm's way, super fun. I love Carson and Trapper swooping in to save the day, and then they let Din go for being a better person than he used to be. The introduction to Chapter 11, The Heiress, is super fun, with Bryce Dallas Howard recreating several shots from her father's film, Apollo 13. But I love the final beat, as the crest almost lands and then tilts right into the water with the Mon Calamari just shaking his head. The title card, similar to the Marshal, certainly caught my attention and had me leaning forward, hoping to see another familiar face this episode. The Mon Calamari dock worker is great. I love his sweater and the fact that it would be literally impossible for him to put on. Frog Lady reuniting with her husband is so freaking sweet and one of the best illustrations of how Star Wars can be completely weird but also completely earnest and heartfelt. It makes me think of Taika Waititi's insight that Star Wars doesn't take itself too seriously, but it does believe in itself. I love the chowder hose. It's so wonderfully gross, and to be honest, I would try it. It's such a nice touch that the inn on this water planet is full of Mon Calamari and Quarren, two aquatic species, and the return of the Mon Calamari flan currency is a fun little callback to the series premiere. Grogu with his little spoon, so cute, and the tiny octopus attack is a funny moment. The Quarren animatronics and computer-generated elements are awesome. The way their face tentacles move around looks great. The fishing crew's betrayal straight up shocked me on my first viewing, and I can still hear Molly's screams as Grogu was nearly eaten by the Mamacore. And I can still remember my scream when Bo freaking Katan swooped in to kick some ass. Just a quick sighting of that iconic helmet, and I was nearly out of my seat. The fight choreography of 3 Mandalorians with their jetpacks and gadgets, amazing. I think it's awesome that Bo-Katan pulling Din out of the water mirrors the moment a Mandalorian first saved him in the Season 1 Clone Wars flashbacks. I love having Katie Sackhoff in live-action Star Wars. I've been a big fan of her since Battlestar Galactica. Unlike the rumors surrounding Cobb Vanth, I fully believed we would see Bo-Katan in this series, but still, I was not emotionally prepared. And it's so great that we finally start to get some answers regarding Din and the rules about keeping your helmet on, learning that, yeah, he was just raised in like a super strict cult was the perfect answer to me, and completely in line with the themes of this series. What does it mean to be a Mandalorian? Is it just following some out-of-date rules someone made up a long time ago? Or is it simply living with honor the best you can today? The shot of the boat exploding at sunset is one of my favorites of the series, and continues to flex how great the volume can be. I really like the detail of Casca Reeves slurping down a live octopus tentacle in her chowder. Another nerdy name drop with the Gazanti freighter. The assault on the freighter itself is amazing, Ludwig's score, as usual, is great, and I just don't think I'll ever get tired of seeing Mandalorians flying around and destroying stormtroopers. That hero shot of Bo-Katan, I mean, come on. This whole sequence is one of the best of the series. The cowardly Imperial officer begging for all the doors to be closed is great, and then all of the imps being ejected from the cargo bay is fantastic. Bo-Katan vaguely referencing the Darksaber and then sarcastically telling Din, "This is the way." Oh yeah, I just love having this character back. And I love how many of Din's plans just involve being shot. Like, so much. He gets shot all the time. The Ahsoka Tano name drop took me by surprise. I figured Bo-Katan would be talking about her, but didn't expect them to just reveal that. And Bo's sincere "this is the way" at the end of their encounter was really nice. I love that we get to see a nice happy ending for the Frog family. All the literal ropes holding the Razor Crest together both inside and out is very funny. The first scene of Chapter 12, The Siege, is adorable and hilarious as all Grogu-centric scenes are. He's just trying his little heart out in that tiny little corridor. I think it's the only time Molly has ever laughed at Grogu being hurt. I like that Din is starting to feel comfortable enough around Grogu to eat around him and remove his helmet just a little bit, and I like that Grogu tries to get a better look at his dad's face. Grief Karga with Grogu is like a proud grandpa. I love that he cutely asks if Mando has been taking good care of him, and then he's like, "No, for real, have you?" It's so cool that Navarro is starting to get a glow up, becoming a nicer and nicer place, even with a new school. I look forward to seeing that continue in Season 3. We don't get a great look at it, but I love the monument to IG-11. None of the kids are listening to the Protocol Droid's galactic geography lesson, but I'm over here enthralled with all her nerdy callouts. The fact that the controls to the Imperial base melted because it's a standard issue base that they never bothered to test or change is a nice detail about how the Empire tends to operate. The Mithril calling out the mint condition of the troop transport as if it's an old toy is great, because it is an old toy, and I'm sure one in mint condition would be worth a lot. I also love him pointing out that there's no guardrail on the reactor controls. The discovery of whatever is being grown in the tubes on that base is a great mystery that should be interesting to learn more about, hopefully in a few weeks. The escape sequence and speeder bike chase away from the base is so fun, and I really enjoy Carl Weathers' directing. I joked in my Season 1 video that Grief Karga can sometimes feel like he's part of a theme park ride, and that's exactly how this scene works. Just fast and fun and over the top in all the right ways. The TIE Fighter chase and dogfight are also great, and Grogu even puts his hands up like he's on a roller coaster. I'll always love getting more Starfighter action in these series. Grogu spitting up is the best period at the end of that sentence. I'm excited to see Carl's next directed episode in Season 3. Hooray for more Carson Teva! I love that it looks like he'll be the voice of reason in the New Republic, trying to point out the danger growing in the Outer Rim. I like the recreation of the original Star Destroyer shot to establish exactly which faction we're cutting to in a new scene. Katie O'Brien's as of yet unnamed Imperial officer is so cool. There's just something about her that fans reacted to and appreciated, and I'm glad she'll be returning in Season 3. Oh man, I remember when the descriptive audio revealed that the droids in the ship were Dark Troopers, and I just was not expecting to see that return from Star Wars Legends in such a big way. The opening scene of Chapter 13, The Jedi, is sick. I wasn't expecting Ahsoka right at the start. The white lightsabers in live action are awesome, cutting the tree and then force pushing the trunk at an enemy, appearing and disappearing through the haze, and then the use of Ahsoka's theme from the Clone Wars. It's all so awesome. I like seeing the massive creatures off in the distance of Corvus. I always like when Star Wars treats elements like that as commonplace. Din doesn't even take note of them. That magistrate's living space is so cool, full of plant life contrasting to the desolation of the planet she rules over. I like having Michael Biehn in Star Wars. I remember his casting was announced and I thought it was perfect. I love him in Terminator and Aliens. I just wish he got to do more. Having Morai the Convor in the shot right before Din meets Ahsoka is a nice touch. Their little fight is great, energetic and fast and exciting with lots of creative choreography packed into just a few seconds. I love that shot of Ahsoka meeting Grogu under the tree with the moon and everything. I love the noises Grogu makes when Din calls him by his name for the first time. I'll admit his name took some getting used to, but I like it now. I love Yoda's theme briefly coming into the score when Ahsoka mentions him. And I love Din's pride when Grogu takes the little ball from him using the Force. Ahsoka's fears surrounding Grogu's fear and attachment makes a lot of sense to me, and I hope her feelings are explored further in the Ahsoka series. Din working with Ahsoka and his remark that their enemies would never expect their cooperation is a cool line, but also perfectly matches other themes of the season surrounding working together, like the people of Mos Pelgo working with the Tusken Raiders. The shot of Ahsoka cutting the bell in half is awesome. I love that Wing was about to try to take on Elsbeth's guards before Din showed up. He had a small part in the episode, but he seemed like a good dude. The shot of Ahsoka igniting her lightsabers kind of into each other is really cool. The fact that the HK droids have Thrawn's 7th Fleet insignia painted on their heads is a nice bit of foreshadowing. The two final confrontations are really cool parallels. One is a Western-inspired shootout, one is a samurai-inspired sword fight. Both are inspirations for Star Wars. The actual Thrawn name drop shocked me to my core. It's something else I simply never thought we would get to see in live action. You know, not yet, but soon, hopefully. The final piece of music integrating Ahsoka's theme once again is great. I would love it if Kevin Kiner got to do the score for her series. I love Din chuckling as Grogu reacts to hearing his name over and over at the start of Chapter 14, The Tragedy. The two of them traveling up to the Seeing Stone together by jetpack is obviously adorable. The design of the Jedi Temple ruins and the Seeing Stone is really cool. The appearance of the Slave One was the last thing I expected to see on Tython. I just shouted, "No way!" realizing we were gonna see Boba Fett again. Grogu activating the Seeing Stone was a powerful moment, and I love that the energy from it meant Din had to protect him until he was done. I feel like I've already started to take having Tim Morrison back in Star Wars for granted, but I was so hyped to see him again in this episode with all his Tusken gear and dropping the simple man trying to make his way through the galaxy line. I was relieved to have Fennec Shand back as well. I figured we'd see her again after the original Boba Fett tease at her body, but still, Ming-Na Wen deserved more than that one episode. Seeing Boba absolutely destroying stormtroopers with his gaffy stick is fantastic. Also, I hadn't watched this episode since the Book of Boba Fett, and now knowing the significance of that weapon, it makes it all even better. I know I joked about Din getting shot all the time being part of his plans, but him using his armor to shield Fennec is pretty great. And then the big, badass Boba Fett moment. Freaking awesome. Just tearing through everyone using every weapon he has, even his knee rockets. I loved it. The destruction of the Razor Crest was a huge shock. Din just got it repaired. Seeing Dark Troopers in action was great, even though they don't do a whole lot, but I immediately loved that they shared design elements with the DT series Sentry droids from Star Wars Rebels, because they were also inspired by the Dark Troopers from Star Wars Legends. Speaking of Legends, it's so cool that Jaster Muriel is listed in Boba Fett's armor's history. That was Boba Fett's original name at one point, but that was retconned into being Jango Fett's surrogate father after the release of Attack of the Clones. Seeing Grogu throwing stormtroopers around is pretty great, but realizing he is using the dark side is a good way to show why he does need training. If you had asked me if I wanted to see Mayfeld returning after Season 1 of The Mandalorian, I would have said, not at all, but Chapter 15, The Believer, made me love the character. Boba Fett's newly painted armor and all-around costume was a nice surprise. It's so cool seeing the inside of the Slave One and the way it rotates around as the ship rights itself. Fett saying the Empire would likely recognize his face is a great line. I like Mayfeld constantly prodding Din about wearing a different helmet. He's still annoying, but a lot more palatable when he's not around the rest of his crew from Season 1. I love his lines about Din's rules changing the more desperate he gets. The action sequence with the Raiders is shot so well. Again, the Mandalorian uses the volume to great effect. Din fighting as if he's still wearing Beskar and taking some major hits for it is a nice touch. It's such a weird feeling being relieved to see the appearance of TIE fighters and stormtroopers coming in to save the day, but I think that's what writer and director Rick Famuyiwa was going for. Mayfeld suggests the Empire and the New Republic are all the same, and it kind of feels that way in this moment. Everyone is patting themselves on the back and celebrating the survival of one of the Rhydonium convoys. There is a sense of camaraderie, but remember that all of the other convoys were left to die with no rescue, and Din and Mayfeld were only saved when they got close to the refinery. They are expendable, and we see that stated more clearly later on. Obviously, I love that Din takes his helmet off and shows his face to a room full of Imperials in order to save Grogu. Like Mayfeld said, all the so-called rules go out the window when something truly important and desperate is at stake. Richard Brake is fantastic as Imperial General Valen Hess. He is so intense even when he's being friendly. Their drink together is one of the best scenes in the entire series. The name drops of Operation Cinder and Burnin' Khan are deep cut and nerdy, but the fact that it's all written in with a clear purpose to show how expendable the people of the Empire are in the service of the so-called greater good is amazing. I love Din's little shake of the head, quietly asking Mayfeld to stop, but he just keeps on going now that he has this chance to tell the general off. Bill Burr is so good in this scene. I love the way it all explodes into violence, and that little shocked pause from the shore trooper, and then even Din's little smile as Mayfeld pretends he never saw his face. It's an all-around amazing scene. The escape with Finnick and Cara covering them is super fun and exciting, and then Mayfeld makes sure the Empire can't pull off another massacre like Burnin' Khan. That's a great end for his character arc this episode. And then we get the return of the seismic charge. What a great sequence! I like that Mayfeld is set free at the end, and his own disbelief and hesitation as he walks away. This time, I genuinely do hope we see him again. Din's message to Gideon is the perfect callback to Chapter 7, but he means more to me than you will ever know. Instead of Gideon calling Grogu it is the cherry on top. I love that Chapter 16, The Rescue, immediately throws us into the middle of an action sequence to capture Dr. Pershing. Luke Baines as the Imperial pilot is great, so casually evil. For how little screen time he has, he really does make you want to see him get shot in the face, which means the actor did a good job. I love seeing a Mandalorian gauntlet fighter in live action, and I'm psyched to know we'll see one again in Season 3. The menu behind Koska Reeves and Bo-Katan is full of fun Easter egg menu items of Star Wars food, which is a lot of fun. But the actual discussion in the scene is great. 3 Mandalorians, all with a different opinion of what it means to be a Mandalorian, all fighting over which way is the way. Bo-Katan saying she's heard Boba Fett's voice 1,000 times is a wonderful line. I like the detail that Cara shot off part of Pershing's ear when she killed the Imperial pilot. Bo, Finnick, Cara, and Koska fighting their way through the cruiser is full of some really fun choreography, like they're all trying to one-up each other. The dubstep-style music for the Dark Troopers is so weird for Star Wars, but I like it. Din's first encounter with a Dark Trooper is awesome, showing that just one of the droids is a difficult fight for even him. I love the brutality of him having his helmet punched into the wall over and over. Gideon fighting with the Darksaber is intense and ferocious. I would expect nothing less from Giancarlo Esposito. The shot of Din pulling out the Beskar spear is one of my favorites. It's just so cool. Holy cow, I love the look Bo-Katan gives when she sees Din waltz in with the Darksaber, having no idea what he's done and what this means for her. And I love that Star Wars Rebels fans everywhere, including me, were like, hang on a minute now, why can't she just take it like she did from Sabine? It's the helmet rule all over again. We just need to be patient to get the full answer, although the Book of Boba Fett started to fill us in. The slow reveal of Luke Skywalker is amazing. Look, I was someone who very firmly did not want Luke in this show. I was loving Cobb Vanth and Bo-Katan, but I also loved that The Mandalorian was kind of its own thing. I had people asking me all season if Luke could be the Jedi that came for Grogu, and I kept resisting that idea. But then we get the X-Wing, and the black and white shot on the screens, then the green lightsaber, then a close-up of the hilt itself, and I was in awe. I have no problem admitting when I'm wrong. Frankly, I'm wrong all the time. There are some ideas that on paper I'm iffy about, but it's always about the execution, and this scene is executed perfectly. And I love that Luke's performance is Mark Hamill's performance. I've seen people complain about the Book of Boba Fett very quickly getting Grogu back with Din, saying it ruins this scene, but I don't think that's true at all. I agree that I wish they spent a little more time apart, but Din taking off his helmet to say goodbye to Grogu still made me emotional during my rewatch. The scene still works exactly as it should in my opinion. I love R2's entrance to the room, and I'll always remember Molly's reaction to seeing two of her favorite characters interacting for the first time. I also remember wondering if this was the freaking series finale. We hadn't heard of a season 3 yet, and it felt so emotional and final. Of course I'm glad that's not the case, but this finale is so good it seems like it could have been the end. It was nice of them to include the post-credits scene to assure us that at least the story of this era would be continuing. And it was a very cool tease to show us Boba taking up Jabba's throne from Bib Fortuna. But that brings us to the end of Season 2 of The Mandalorian. I guess I should just say that in general, I think the second season of the series was a huge improvement over the first, which I already liked quite a bit. After Andor, I've been seeing a lot of people starting to turn on the Mandoverse. Rewatching the series so soon after Andor, yes, it's a different flavor of Star Wars, but it's a flavor that I love. It is so much weirder than Andor, and I think that's good. And a lot of my initial desire that The Mandalorian would be more its own thing without being so connected to the Skywalker saga and other stories, I don't feel that way anymore because Andor gave me that. So now I'm all in on The Mandalorian continuing to connect strongly to everything else, to give me more of those moments like Cobb Vanth and Bo-Katan and Luke Skywalker. I can't wait to see what Season 3 brings us in just one more week. Let me know your favorite moments of Season 2 in the comments. You can watch my video on the first season if you missed that, and check out this playlist for other videos in the same series. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, and consider checking out our Patreon page, where we'll be releasing video reactions and audio commentaries for every episode of The Mandalorian Season 3 when it begins airing. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.